Close your eyes for a moment and picture the open sea. The wind carries the smell of salt and the endless horizon blurs into grey. Beneath the creaking timbers of an old wooden ship, a crew stirs from uneasy sleep. The year is somewhere in the 1600s, during what historians now call the Golden Age of Piracy. But for the men who lived it, there was nothing golden about it. The story of piracy began long before the romantic images of treasure maps and buried gold. The real pirates were often desperate men, and sometimes women, pushed into the trade by poverty, hunger, or war. Many had once been sailors in merchant fleets or naval ships. When those ships offered no pay, no food, or no chance of survival, some turned to piracy as the only way to stay alive. A pirate ship was rarely glamorous. It was crowded, filthy, and full of danger. The crew lived shoulder to shoulder, sleeping on damp planks, surrounded by the constant smell of tar, sweat, and rotting wood. The sea never stopped moving. It rolled and groaned day and night. If the wind was kind, the ship glided. If not, it drifted in the scorching sun until the crew's lips cracked from thirst. Food was a problem from the very start. Pirates often ate what they could steal or what didn't spoil too fast. Salted meat, hardtack biscuits, dried beans. Fresh fruit was rare, and when it was gone, sickness followed. Scurvy, caused by lack of vitamin C, rotted their gums, loosened their teeth, and left them weak and feverish. On deck, men coughed, spat blood, and went on working anyway, because there was no other choice. When a ship spotted another on the horizon, everything changed. The calm boredom of the sea turned to tension. The crew climbed the rigging to see if it flew a friendly flag or not. If the captain decided to chase, men ran to the cannons, ready to fight. A pirate attack wasn't always a roaring battle. Sometimes it was quick and brutal. Grappling hooks flew, boards cracked, and within minutes one ship might be lost to smoke and screams. And yet, for all its violence, there was a strange sense of democracy aboard a pirate ship. Unlike most navies of the time, where sailors were beaten and starved by officers, pirates elected their captains. The crew could vote to replace them if they were too cruel or too weak. Loot was shared by agreed-upon rules called articles. Every man received a share, depending on his rank and contribution. It wasn't fair by modern standards, but compared to life in the Royal Navy, it almost felt just. Still, the punishment for breaking those rules was severe. Thieves among the crew could lose an ear or a hand. Betrayal could mean being marooned, left on a deserted island with nothing but a bottle of water and a pistol. The pirates called it justice, though it was often just another form of cruelty. Nights at sea were long. The ocean stretched endlessly around them, reflecting only starlight. The men told stories to keep the fear away. Stories of cursed ships, ghostly lights, and islands filled with treasure. They sang songs that echoed across the waves, voices rough and tired but strangely hopeful. For all their brutality, pirates were human. They laughed, they mourned, and they dreamed of home, though most hadn't seen one in years. For some, piracy was temporary, a way to survive until fortune turned. For others, it became their identity. The black flag was their only allegiance, and freedom was worth any price. Yet that freedom came with a cost. Every battle, every raid, every storm chipped away at their strength, and deep down, most knew that pirates rarely died old. The sea would take them, one way or another. Some went down in storms, others were captured, hanged, or left to rot in tropical heat. But until that day came, they lived by their own code. Hard, brutal, and fleeting. By the second month at sea, the excitement of piracy faded into exhaustion. The ship's deck was slick with salt, and the air smelled of mildew. Sleep came in short, broken hours, interrupted by the rolling of waves or the shout of a lookout spotting sails on the horizon. The ocean could be cruelly still for days, trapping the ship in heat so heavy it felt like the air itself was pressing down. The men spent their time repairing sails, cleaning weapons, and scraping barnacles from the hull. Work was constant. The slightest neglect could mean disaster in the next storm. When the wind rose, ropes had to be hauled, cannons secured, and cargo balanced. Every man knew his role, and mistakes could cost lives. Below deck, the living conditions were dreadful. Rats scurried over the sleeping men, and the constant dampness turned clothes to rags. The smell of unwashed bodies, smoke, and spoiled food filled every breath. Disease spread easily. Fever, dysentery, and scurvy took more lives than battles did. When a crewmate died, his body was wrapped in canvas and slid into the sea, marked only by silence and the slap of water against wood. Fights among the crew were common. Tensions grew fast in such close quarters, especially when the rum ran low. Disputes over shares of loot, insults, or cheating at dice could turn deadly. A quick slash of a knife, a shove overboard. Life on a pirate ship was cheap, and tempers were short. But discipline, when it came from the captain or quartermaster, was brutal. Punishments were meant to scare the rest into obedience. Flogging with knotted rope tore skin to ribbons. Being tied to the mast in the sun for hours was another favourite. For the worst offences, mutiny, theft, or cowardice, there were darker ends. A traitor might be marooned on a deserted island with nothing but a bottle of water and a pistol with one shot. Some used it on themselves before thirst and madness took hold. Yet even in that chaos, pirates had their own strange order. Their code, the Articles of Agreement, dictated how loot was divided and how justice was carried out. Every crew member signed, often with an X, swearing loyalty. They believed in fairness among themselves, even if their trade was robbery. In a world that gave them nothing, this rough democracy gave them purpose. When a ship was captured, the aftermath was never clean. Smoke, screams, and fire mixed with the smell of gunpowder. The losing crew often begged for mercy, but pirates weren't known for kindness. Some were spared to join the ranks, others were tossed overboard. Prisoners with valuable skills, surgeons, carpenters, navigators, might be kept alive for a time. Everyone else became part of the sea's endless toll. On quiet nights, when the horizon was black and the stars flickered above, a strange calm would fall over the deck. The sea whispered against the hull, and men spoke in low voices about what they missed. Wives, children, home. The youngest among them sometimes cried quietly, ashamed to show fear. Even hardened pirates were haunted by memories of the lives they left behind. Storms were the true enemy. When the sky darkened and the wind screamed through the rigging, courage vanished. Waves slammed against the hull, tossing the ship like driftwood. Men were swept overboard, vanishing in seconds. The sound of cracking wood and shouting voices filled the dark. Those who survived clung to masts, praying for daylight. When the storm passed, the survivors looked upon their half-destroyed ship and the empty sea where their friends had been. Each storm was a reminder. They could steal from kings, fight soldiers and defy the law, but they could never conquer the sea. It took what it wanted, when it wanted. By morning, the routine resumed. Sails were patched, bodies were buried, and rum was passed around. The laughter that followed was hollow but necessary. Pirates lived moment to moment, knowing any day could be their last. They had traded law for freedom, but it was a freedom soaked in blood and salt. And as the sun set on another day, the sea glowed red, as if it knew what they had done and what it would one day take back. Part 3. The End of the Golden Ages. The years drifted on. The Golden Age of Piracy began to fade like mist on the morning tide. The ocean that once promised freedom turned into a graveyard of lost ships and broken men. By the early 1700s, the world had changed. The empires that once ignored the pirates began to hunt them. Pirate hunters, called privateers, sailed under royal flags, paid in gold for every outlaw they captured or killed. They knew the tricks, the hiding spots, and the routes pirates favoured. One by one, the great pirate havens fell. Nassau, Port Royal, Tortuga. What were once wild sanctuaries filled with rum and stolen treasure became military posts, watched by cannons and guarded by law. The pirates who remained found it harder to survive. Trade ships sailed in convoys, escorted by warships. Coastal towns built defenses. Even the taverns that once welcomed them closed their doors. Betrayal became common. A hungry sailor might trade the location of his own captain for a promise of pardon, though those promises were often lies. For those who were caught, the end was swift and public. In port cities like London, Charleston, and Kingston, crowds gathered to watch the hangings. The condemned were led through the streets in chains, faces sunburned and weathered, eyes hollow from years at sea. Some shouted curses, others stayed silent. Their bodies were hung at the harbour as warnings, swaying gently with the tide. The message was clear: the age of pirates was over. Yet even as their ships burned and their flags were torn down, their stories refused to die. Sailors whispered of buried treasure, ghost ships, and captains who cheated death. Names like Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Anne Bonny became legends. In truth, most of them lived short, miserable lives, hunted, sick, and half-starved. But the myths grew larger with every telling. For centuries afterward, the image of the pirate changed. The world remembered not the stench of the bilge, or the hunger, or the screams during a boarding. Instead, it remembered adventure, maps marked with an X, gold coins glinting in lantern light, a life of freedom on the open sea. But the real pirates would have laughed at that. Freedom, to them, was nothing more than survival without a master. When night fell, the sea became their only witness. No one knows how many pirate ships sank beneath those dark waves, their crews vanishing without a trace. No songs marked their passing, only the soft hiss of the tide and the call of distant gulls. Their treasures, if they ever had any, were swallowed by the ocean long ago. And yet something of them remains, the idea of defiance, of living outside the rules, even for a little while. That's what draws us back to their story. Not the gold, but the spirit, the refusal to kneel, the need to be free no matter the cost. But freedom, in their world, was a cruel companion. It gave them the open horizon, but it also gave them loneliness, hunger, and fear. It asked everything and gave nothing back. Many of them died believing they would be remembered, and in a strange way they were, but not for who they truly were. Tired, broken men chasing a dream that the sea would never let them have. As the waves roll endlessly, you can still imagine them out there, the whisper of canvas in the wind, the creak of a ghostly ship drifting through fog. No flags, no songs, no crew left alive, only the echo of what they once were. The brutal life of a pirate was never about adventure. It was about survival. It was about facing the sea each morning, knowing it would one day take you. And when it finally did, it left behind nothing but stories. Stories told softly now, to help you drift to sleep as the waves fade into the distance.